قلة المداد يا الله اسقينا بالمداد يا الله.
أما بعد فالسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. In the time of Corona, we are reading Qur'an, inshallah. So we are going to further look at the ayat fi kitabillahi azza wa jal. So barakallahu fikum, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect you all against this flu with another name, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us insight and speedy recovery for all who are sick, including my wife. Don't forget her in your dua, because she has been quite sick this night and this morning as well. So alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. We are going to continue. So last time we had a look at al-Islami al-Kitab. There were other ways to read that I hadn't read or I have not yet read. So for example, we have in Wash, for example, we will see that the Ra, when the Ra comes after a Kasra, it's a Ra al-Muraqqaqa, and he will have the Med al-Badal, like for example 4 counts instead of 2. So he will read وَبِالْآخِرَةِ هُمْ يُوقِنُونَ. You heard that one? وَبِالْآخِرَةِ. And he won't say آخِرَةِ. Also the lam will be heavy when he says يُقِيمُونَ الصَّلَاةَ وَمِمَّا رَزَقْنَاهُمْ يُنْفِقُونَ. And then you have many other qira'at who have the mim al-jama'. So they will go anyway, we will see later, otherwise it becomes too much. So now we come to a part we've mentioned, or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned those who are the believers who will succeed in the hereafter. We also said that muflihun doesn't mean those who are successful. Remember? We said that it comes from the word falaha. And falaha is a farmer, and a farmer is he who what? Sows and will cultivate what he sows. So this is but now why not does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then say that the disbelievers will also eventually reap what they sow? So why doesn't he call them muflihun? Because they don't have a harvest. They won't harvest even their good deeds. Because the disbelievers, they will receive their reward, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is just. So we're not saying that when a disbeliever does something good, that he will not be rewarded, but he's not a muflih. Why? Because he won't reap or harvest what he sows in this life in the hereafter, but will get it here. And that's why very often disbelievers, might have less problems than believers on the face of the earth. Why? Because they are receiving their reward for the good they do in this life. Is that clear? So this is why, barakallahu fikum, that sometimes Muslims are frustrated. They say like, okay, why do we suffer so much? And so many non-Muslims don't suffer as much. What is going on? Well, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rewards the non-believers in this life, and He rewards the believers sometimes in this life, but always in the hereafter. So this is why, barakallahu fikum, we should always look at the world from an Islamic perspective. And if we're not going to look through the teachings of the Qur'an or the teaching of the Sunnah, we're going to have a conflict between our beliefs and the way we think. We think in line with what we believe. This is one of the most important things today. And if we don't do that, then things get mixed up and we're like bipolar, right? Like we're between this and that. We don't want that. We have one belief, one tawheed. So now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, the believers are the muflihun, nobody else. Now, meaning in the next life. In this life, it's different. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about the kafaru. Yani alladhina kafaru. We already said what the meaning of kufr is, isn't it? Nam al-kuffar, in the Arabic language, nam kuffar means farmer. Nam kuffar, kafir means farmer. Yu'ajibul kuffar, nam Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Al-Hadid speaks about the kuffar, and he means the farmer. So why are the kuffar called farmers? Which is very strange, because muflihun is also like a farmer. But the difference between a muflih, the muflih is a farmer who harvests what he sows. And kafir is just a farmer, without regards, harvesting what he sows or not, he's a kafir. Why? Because he plows the earth. Now, kafir means somebody who plows something, meaning he turns the upside downwards. That's what a farmer does, right? When they go with their bulls, or I don't know, in China or India, whatever, then they turn the soil upside down, isn't it? That's what a kafir does. So every muflih is a kafir, but not every kafir is a muflih from a linguistic point of view. Okay? So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says kuffar, like today, it has been misused by ISIS, for example, and it's all of a sudden like kafir is an insult. Like if you now were to tell a kafir, I'm a Muslim and you're a kafir, he would feel insulted, while in reality, you shouldn't feel insulted at all. It just means that you have chosen to take that, or to turn that which is apparent, and that which is apparent, that it's that everything you see has a creator. I mean, it can't just exist out of nothing, and that you just went like this. You made the apparent invisible. Is that clear? So that's why he's kafir. Now, what you see here, it's ajib. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا سَوَاءٌ عَلَيْهِمْ. Translate, Asim?
I don't have the translation.
Okay, who wants to do that?
Indeed.
And we don't say translate, right? There's no translation of the Qur'an. I'm going to emphasize on this again. There is no such a thing as a translation of the Qur'an. There is something as an impossible interpretation of the Qur'an. One of the possible meanings, but a translation doesn't exist. Okay, so continue. إِنَّ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا سَوَاءٌ عَلَيْهِمْ. Yalla, bismillah.
Indeed, those who believe.
No, Asim.
Sorry.
Asim is the leader.
You found it.
Yeah. Surely for those who have disbelieved, it is all the same whether you warn them or you warn them not.
Is the same what?
It is the same. It is all the same.
Doesn't he say all the same for them? Why? For you it's for them. Why do people leave something away here? Because this is the key, one of the key meanings in the ayah. Then here we have kafaru. Because people seem to be having problems with this. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saying, those who have disbelieved, it is the same for them, whether you warn them or you don't warn them, they will not believe. So then people ask themselves the question about divine justice. Like, where's the justice? If they're not going to believe anyway, why were they created? Like, even if I make dawah, yes or no. So the first practical thing we need to know here is Allah says it is the same for them. He didn't say it's the same for you. Meaning, we don't know the results of things. So the kuffar, those who are kafaru, it is the same for them, whether you warn them or not, they will not believe. But Allah didn't say it's the same for you, meaning you shouldn't do dawah. No, we keep on doing dawah because what we are responsible for that. We are not responsible for what they will eventually do. But now this kafaru goes back before creation. Inna alladhina kafaru, because it's in the past tense, right? They have already disbelieved. Where did they disbelieve? How do we know? Because maybe kafaru, but in the future they will yu'minu. No, alladhina kafaru fi ilmillah. Yani those whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows that they have disbelieved now and will not believe. Now, what does this mean? I will take you back further. Yani, let us say about 100,000 years back before creation. That's or 50 million years. Anyway, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created Adam, Allah says that He took every single soul that will exist on the face of the earth out of Adam. No? And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَأَشْهَدَهُمْ عَلَىٰ أَنفُسِهِمْ أَلَسْتُ بِرَبِّكُمْ. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made them testify, every single soul who's here, or will ever live, or has ever lived on the face of the earth, was once in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You see? And then Allah Jalla wa Ala told them, am I not your Lord? قَالُوا بَلَى. They said, definitely you are. But there were two kinds of people who said this. People who said this while they didn't mean it, and people who said this while they meant it. Okay, like here. They say, our ulama, that when you were created, your soul was created, you didn't have a body, that you were shown two ways. وَهَدَيْنَاهُ النَّجْدَيْنِ. You were shown two ways. One was a way to hell, one was a way to paradise. But now the thing was that you had a choice. The way to hell was a way where you could do whatever you wanted. That was a way where you had no limitations. Haram was halal, halal was not haram, and whatever. And some people chose for this path. Now you can say, why would they choose for this path? Well, a lot of people do this. A lot of people, because they want immediate gratification, they look at the short term and they don't look at the long term. This is what people do, and that is what we call being crazy. That's what we call being out of your mind, but people do it anyway. So they want this immediate gratification, and people had this as well here. They said, for 60 years, I'm not going to live like not drinking and not enjoying myself, not going out, not this, not that. So they made this choice, and they said, whatever comes after it, I want to enjoy. And then you had other people who looked at the short term, and they said, no, I'm going to submit to all these laws, to all these rules, because eventually I want the long-term happiness. And that is where you made your mind up. That is where you chose. You have already chosen. So this is very important. So now, when you were there, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave you a body after you being a soul. Yani the soul has been given a body. It's not the body which has been given a soul. Because your soul existed before your body. But now to turn that what you wanted and you have chosen for, you needed that body which would then do that what your soul chose for. So your life will be in harmony with what you chose back then. So إِنَّ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا, those who chose for kufr back then. So why life then? So that there would be no argument, yani when you are punished or when you're not punished, or if you were to be put into hellfire or put into Jannah, that there wouldn't be any question arising, because you know why you are in hell and you know why you are in paradise. So إِنَّ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا, those who have disbelieved back then, yani it doesn't change whether you warn them or not, they will not believe. But as we don't know who they are, we keep on inviting even Fir'aun. It was sure that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knew that Fir'aun would never believe. Exactly like he knew that Abu Lahab would never believe. But nevertheless, he said, اذهب إلى فرعون إنه طغى. Go to Fir'aun because he has transgressed. But Allah knows he won't believe. So why doing it? Because it's سواء عليهم and not سواء عليكم. We go by what we see, not by what Allah knows. You see? So that's very important here. Do you see the difference? Because otherwise, and this is a very beautiful example of how the Muslim should look at the decree. We should act like if we were free people, disconnected from everything, knowing that we are connected to the One. But the qadarullah is sirullah fi khalqihi. La yattali'u alayhi al-bashar. Meaning that the qada and the qadar and the divine choice is a secret with Allah, which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has placed in His creation. And that's why Imam al-Tahawi says that we shouldn't ask any questions about it. We behave like we are free people, but everything will fall in place by the divine will, but we are not concerned with what Allah wants, is doing or knows about us. We should act like if we, So it's sawa'un alayhim, but we continue to do what we do. You understand what I mean? Because otherwise, if you say, why did Allah send Musa to Fir'aun? If he already knew that Fir'aun won't believe, he knows it. So what's the deal anyway to send the prophets then? Well, because we should live like these human beings who don't know the sirullah, who don't know the divine Divine secret. Is that clear? So now, even if you look at someone and you say like, this person will never become a believer, like Boris the Turk, for example, the Prime Minister, right? So he's from Turkey, right? Originally, yes. So for example, Boris the Turk, maybe you will think that he will never believe. But maybe one day he will go back to Turkey. Yes, there you go. And he will maybe one day pray in the masjid there. Who knows? And now if you say, no, that's impossible, I can't imagine myself this, then you have just limited Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's guidance to what you think and you believe. We don't limit Allah. And this is why, I'm never going to get out of this. You gave up on Allah? Do you give up on Allah? Because when you say, I can't continue, this will never work, I will never be able, that part is true. You will never be able unless Allah helps you. That's where the difference is between الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا and الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. There where other people stop is there where we go on. There where people think it's impossible, we believe in the possible. Because he who makes it possible is Allah. Is that clear? So إِنَّ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا سَوَاءٌ عَلَيْهِمْ أَأَنذَرْتَهُمْ. So if you warn them or you don't warn them, لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ. This is very strange. Now, yu'minun, is it a fi'l or is it a sifa? Yu'minun is a fi'l, isn't it?
No.
There's fi'l mudari'. The fi'l mudari' means that something is ongoing, which is very strange because kafaru is in the past. La yu'minun is in the present. The past, because they chose to do kufr, and not believing is an ongoing thing until they die. You see? So, meaning that they are kuffar and it's an ongoing thing. Whatever you do, they won't believe you in anything you say. But now, أَأَنذَرْتَهُمْ أَمْ لَمْ تُنذِرْهُمْ is not a permission of Allah to say you shouldn't warn them. Now, it's because of this, remember Asim? It's the same for them, whether you warn them or don't warn them. So some people understand from this, when they don't accept religion, they don't accept my message, I just leave them. Because they don't believe anyway. That would be true if this would be alaykum. We need to warn them over and over again until they get fed up with us. Until they say, I heard this name Allah so many times, go away from me, you continue. Because that's what Nuh alayhi salam did. Now the thing is here, that one of the things the Muslims should do with the non-Muslims is al-inzar. And al-inzar is warning. Now what we do with non-Muslims is usually not warning. It is trying to show them that Islam is also beautiful and really that what you need and is not as bad as you think it is. That's always from this inferiority complex that Muslims are going towards the non-Muslims and trying to prove them Islam is not so bad. The world is a proof that Islam is not the worst thing on the face of the earth. Islam is the proof that the majority of people who are carrying weapons and who are bombarding people and who are going with ships on the oceans are not Muslims. The world shows that. So why should we try to make a point when there is no point to make? But nevertheless, we try to make that point. And that's because of this inferiority complex. We should know that the truth, is what is bigger than the lie. So we don't have this. And this is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, warn them. Warning is a position of might and power. Not a position of what? Of looking down upon someone or being evil to someone. It is also empathy. It is also love. When you love someone, you warn them. You love the Muslim and the non-Muslim. You love them as for the human being they are. Not the actions. Like you don't like a sin, you don't like kufr. But as for the human being, the natural biological love, that's no problem. There's no problem at all. I mean, if you know that, subhanAllah, Allah allowed the Muslim to marry a non-Muslimah, getting married and having a child together, that means that there is love, isn't it? There is love. So Allah didn't forbid the Muslim to love a non-Muslim, even as a friend. And this is where we often go wrong. No, that's a kafir. I can't go with kuffar to the gym. I can't, kuffar. If you don't mix and live with the kuffar, as we say, how will they get to know Islam? Just by books? Or by you once in a month telling him that he needs to become a Muslim? Do things with them which are not haram. I mean, they're not the coronavirus, are they? One moment. So this is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, لا ينهاكم الله عن الذين لم يقاتلوكم في الدين ولم يخرجوكم من دياركم. What? وَتُقْسِطُوا إِلَيْهِمْ إِنَّ اللَّهَ يُحِبُّ الْمُقْسِطِينَ. Allah says in the Quran, it's not forbidden for the believers to take as friends and to be righteous towards those who are non-believers and didn't force you out of your homes and didn't, weren't witnesses of the way you were killed and so forth, to have them as friends. وَتُقْسِطُوا إِلَيْهِمْ. Al-qist is one of the most beautiful things. To be very good and give more than they deserve. So this is why, barakallahu fikum, that we should look at these things. Al-indhar is also compassion. We have compassion and empathy. And today, very often, the only thing we have, even if we don't write it on our Facebook walls, is like hatred. And sometimes anger towards everyone who is not a Muslim. Because we consider everybody to be guilty and everybody to approve of what is happening in the world. And that's wrong. our first emotion towards non-Muslims is an emotion of a shepherd who wants his flock to find its way to the eternal gardens of Eden, to let his soul therein graze, yani in the gardens of the divine nearness. That's what we want. That's what we want. So barakallahu fikum, this is very important. And Allah saying alayhim and not alaykum means you have no reason to give up on them. You have no reason to give up on them, because that's what you were created for. So instead of having this inferiority complex, we're going to change this into they actually need us, and I have what they need. Is that clear? So now to come back, and then I will get back to you, Asim. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, قُلْ يَا أَهْلَ الْكِتَابِ تَعَالَوْا, say, O people of the book, ta'alaw. Yani ta'alaw. What is the word you find here? Al-ulu. And what is ulu?
Elevation.
Elevation. Allah says when we invite the people of the book, we say, قُلْ يَا أَهْلَ الْكِتَابِ تَعَالَوْا إِلَى كَلِمَةٍ سَوَاءٍ بَيْنَنَا وَبَيْنَكُمْ. Yani, all people of the book, let us debate about things which are more important, things which are higher. Now when a Muslim speaks on television, it's usually only about topics that they choose. So yes, and what do you think about the terrorist attacks? You never have a Muslim saying, which ones do you mean? Immediately he thinks about Muslims, isn't it? Or is it true that Muslims oppress their women? Why don't you eat pork? Why don't you drink alcohol? They choose topics which will never lead to the beauty of Islam to be exposed and shown to these people. So sometimes we should choose the topic. I want to talk about the names of the divine. I want to talk about this. I want to talk about that. And that is ta'alaw. But when you are invited to talk about a topic that they choose, you will always come like this. And Allah says that should be finished. No longer. Ta'alaw, come with me, come. I will show you what it's all about. Because I understood life. I understood as a Muslim what life is about, what death is about, what your life is about, what the reason for us living is, the divine wisdom, and that is what we have. So why all of a sudden do we feel so weak and so vulnerable, and people like we should prove something? We don't have anything to prove. أَنذَرْتَهُمْ أَمْ لَمْ تُنذِرْهُمْ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ. Why is the reason that they don't believe? ختم الله على قلوبهم وعلى سمعهم وعلى أبصارهم غشاوة ولهم عذاب عظيم. Translate? Pseudo translate?
Allah has set a seal on their hearts and on their hearing, and on their eyes there is a covering, and for them awaits a mighty punishment.
Now some people say, oh, so it's Allah who did it. Allah does everything, but فَلَمَّا زَاغُوا أَزَاغَ اللَّهُ قُلُوبَهُم. When they went astray, and they chose to go astray and not come back, is then when Allah let their hearts go astray. So ختم الله على قلوبهم, Allah sealed their hearts. The moment that they showed that they didn't want to believe, that the proofs came to them, and that they said, I don't want to believe, like Abu Lahab, for example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sealed their hearts. And there is على قلوبهم وعلى سمعهم وعلى أبصارهم غشاوة. What is غشاوة?
Veil.
A veil.
Or covering.
Al-Ghishawa is actually, could be used for a veil which isn't a veil. You can be veiled without seeing the veil. Like if you have something transparent.
Yeah, invisible cloak.
An invisible cloak, for example. So meaning that they see, but they don't see. They hear, but they don't hear. And this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, لَهُمْ قُلُوبٌ لَا يَفْقَهُونَ بِهَا. And they have hearts with which they don't understand. آذان لا يسمعون بها. Or أبصار, excuse me. أعين لا يبصرون بها. They have eyes with which they don't see. And they have ears with which they don't hear. What does this mean? That they hear everything, but they don't understand the deeper meaning of it. And this is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, subhanallah, said summun bukmun umyun, deaf, dumb and blind. Not meaning that they're deaf, dumb and blind, but they are deaf, dumb and blind to hear, see or believe in the truth. And this is what Fir'aun was all about. He saw so many things that if people would see, they would just believe. But Allah says, even if we were to let the dead talk to them, they won't believe. They will not believe. If the dead would come out of their graves, they would be in shock, but they would just say, سُحِرَتْ أَعْيُنُنَا. Yani, we have been, a magic spell has been done upon us. So anyway, what we need to know here, barakallahu fikum, is when you say that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala yani, has sealed their hearts and sealed their eyes and their ears, it's for them not to hear, see, or feel the truth. The problem now here, barakallahu fikum, is Imam al-Qurtubi rahmatullahi alayhi, in his muqaddimah, he made it very clear that every ayah which applies to the non-Muslims in the Quran also applies to the Muslims up to a certain degree. So every ayah in the Quran which applies to Muslims, non-Muslims and the people of Ahl Kitab and so much more, that this also applies to the Muslims up to a certain degree. Meaning that you as a Muslim, sometimes when you turn your back towards the teachings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that maybe at a certain point you will no longer hear the truth. Or you might no longer be moved. You might hear the Qur'an, it doesn't do anything with your heart. You might read an ayah, you might look at the sky, it doesn't remind you of the Creator. You might hear somebody reciting the Qur'an, giving you advice, and there's a deviation. It goes from here to here. Or you might have the will to do something good, or to pray on time, or pray at night, or to fast, but you don't find the power to do so. So now, what is the reason then behind that? It's just you or I, yani having turned our backs to the teachings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. So this might also apply to us. And the problem is that when we as a Muslim, we don't cherish what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us, He might just take it away from us, and we will long for it until we die. It might never return to us. And this is with a lot of things that we see in our lives. It might also be the intensity with which you experience your prayer, for example. Maybe 5 years ago, 7 years ago, your prayer was like very cherished. It was something special. You had a feeling in your heart. And now it's gone. All of this is khatam Allahu ala qulubihim. So this is why, barakallahu fikum. So what should we do then to get rid of this? Well, to go back to the first 5 ayat of Surah al-Baqarah. Now, the cure for this here is Alif Lam Mim ذلك الكتاب لا ريب فيه هدى للمتقين الذين يؤمنون بالغيب ويقيمون الصلاة ومما رزقناهم ينفقون. Go on. وأنزل من قبلك أولئك على وأولئك هم المفلحون. Now here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says عذاب عظيم. We're going to get back to that one, inshallah. What I want you now to do is to connect these 5 verses of Surah Al-Baqarah and try to find a link between the 5 verses of Baqarah and these verses about the kuffar. Yes?
Why is the khatam ala qulub wa ala sam'ihim, but the absar only get a rishalah?
So your question is, why is there khatam ala qulubihim wa ala sam'ihim?
Why are their hearts and hearing sealed, but their eyes are only veiled? Is that, I don't know.
Imam al-Razi speaks about this. I would like you to think about it.
I found some other stuff in terms of the linguistic thing.
Go ahead.
Because I looked at this today.
Yes.
So there's a plural for qulub.
Yes.
Their hearts are plural.
Yes.
Their hearing is singular.
Yes.
And their seeing is also plural.
Yes.
And it mentions something to do with the fact that everybody's hearts have a different way of processing information and the message that would come. So that's why the hearts are brought based on the subjectivity of human beings, that everybody sort of processes everything differently, but the message everybody hears is the same. So what you see will be different based on how you perceive it, and what you process by your heart will be different based on the way your heart is. But the message you hear ultimately will all be the same, and that's why there's a plurality there.
Where did you... Sheikh Tantawi. Imam al-Razi rahimahullah speaks in detail about these things as well. So it's very beautiful. Thank you for sharing. So how are you going to connect the 5 first verses of Al-Baqarah with these ones here? I want you to think about it. So look in front of you. So that's a kind of exercise I want you to make. Okay, let us have a look, right? So we're going to, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in 5 verses, He speaks about the people of Iman, then here He speaks about the people of Kufr, and then He will speak about the people of Nifaq. And there are the 3 only existing categories of people. It's either Iman, it's either Kufr, it's either Nifaq. Now, it's Iman, Kufr and Nifaq. So now when we're going to have a look at the 2, like in Surah, the characteristics of the believers and then the disbelievers. So we have إِنَّ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا. In the other one, it's about الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. Do you agree?
No.
Okay, that's one. Then when you're going to see أَنذَرْتَهُمْ أَمْ لَمْ تُنذِرْهُمْ, they will not believe. The taqwa is that when the inzar comes to you, you believe. Now, so أَنذَرْتَهُمْ أَمْ لَمْ تُنذِرْهُمْ goes against what? On the other hand?
وَالَّذِينَ يُؤْمِنُونَ
هُدًى لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. Now the huda comes to them and they have taqwa and they follow it. And this is not the case with أَنذَرْتَهُمْ أَمْ لَمْ تُنذِرْهُمْ. If you go to the next one, لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ, well, they يُؤْمِنُون. Then ختم الله على قلوبهم. It's not, what is على قلوبهم? Yani they don't believe in al-Ghayb. Now, because if they would believe in al-Ghayb with their hearts, now, then what?
If they believe in it, then there'll be moments.
So here, ختم الله على قلوبهم, yani they don't believe in al-Ghayb. That's the problem. So here, the other ones, يؤمنون بالغيب. So there's no ختم على قلوبهم. Some say, this is far-fetched, but we're going to mention it anyway. وعلى سمعهم. Allah speaks in the first 5 about salah. And salah is preceded by adhan, which invites you to salah, to the salah. So meaning that they are not guided spiritually, but also not physically. Meaning, because they are الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا. So they won't even pray to what? To give you the impression that they believe. So على سمعهم, yani they don't answer the call to prayer. And the mu'minun, they do. Then على أبصارهم is once again al-Ghayb. And the difference here, لَهُمْ عَذَابٌ عَظِيمٌ. The other ones, their reward is بِالْآخِرَةِ هُمْ يُوقِنُونَ. And the reward is هُمُ الْمُفْلِحُونَ. No? So they say this is a way that we place the first 5 verses and the last ones against each other. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You should know that some of these things, barakallahu fikum, this is, like I said at the very beginning, this is tafsir. This is not ilmu tafsir. You remember the difference between tafsir and ilmu tafsir?
Yeah, tafsir is not, there's no difference of opinion on tafsir itself.
Ilmu
tafsir.
Yes. In ilmu tafsir, you just go, what's the word? What does it mean? What are the linguistic possibilities? What is the grammar? Done. But like here, this is a kind of philosophy, isn't it? So, but all of these philosophies, religious tafsiri philosophies, are correct as long as they don't contradict the message of Islam and as long as they don't, what? Go against the ilmu tafsir. I'm going to give you an example here, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, that's a nice one for you, Asif. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, سواء عليهم أأنذرتهم أم لم تنذرهم لا يؤمنون. What some said here is that these are 2 different separate words. So that it would be سواء عليهم أأنذرتهم أم لم تنذر. It is the same whether you warn them or you don't warn, they will not believe. There is a difference, isn't it? So the other one is سواء, it doesn't matter whether you warn them or you don't warn them, they don't believe. And if you cut it here, which is wrong because it's لم تنذرهم, it's one word, then it has another meaning. Means that the emphasis is on the fact that they do not believe. None? Okay, so would that be correct? That would be wrong. Why would this be wrong, this explanation? Because it goes against the rule of grammar. Against the Arabic. Sorry, I feel a bit not so much. Are there any questions?
When it said إِنَّ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا, it doesn't mention what their kufr is in.
No.
So before الَّذِينَ يُؤْمِنُونَ بِالْغَيْبِ, so would that be like a
It means they kafaru in everything. So meaning that, but like in the 5 verses, everything which is mentioned, they are kafir in it.
But there's no need to repeat it.
There's no need to repeat it. Why? Because why does Allah says here, for example, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا بِاللَّهِ وَبِالْغَيْبِ وَبِالرُّسُلِ وَالْمَلَائِكَ and so forth. Well, usually it is not done because it's not worth mentioning it. Kufr is kufr. But sometimes Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in other places in the Quran, He will mention this in detail. But like it is, because it is the beginning of the Quran, yani a lot of, how can I say, the guidelines are being given to the Muslims as we've seen at the beginning. No. Anyway, are there any questions? People look a bit tired. Maybe I'm making it too boring. I'm sorry. Is everything okay?
Alhamdulillah.
No questions? Please ask a question. So I can stop speaking a bit. Ask a question, please. Yes, I would like.
If I found this other thing.
Yes. Habibi, if I have to mention everything I found about this, then that's going to be a lot. No. I mean, there's so much to say. The problem is we need to make it concise. Because no, I want you to share it. I want to share it. But the thing is, if we are going to mention like everything which we can mention, then I think we need like 3 classes for 1 verse. So and as I said at the beginning, I want to go very quickly over it. Understand? So, but what you can do if you like, inshallah, is the things you want to share. Why don't you write them on an A4, for example? You print them and you hand it out to the students. That would be nice, because I think it's very nice. The thing is, where are we going to draw the line in mentioning things? So that's another question. Anyway, what's the time, please? How long have we been speaking? When did we start?
38 minutes.
38 minutes. MashaAllah. We've got 7 minutes left. Okay, so now barakallahu fikum. We just go back to the very beginning, where we said that everybody made a choice. So now in this verse it is clear that your life will be lived in harmony with the choice you made. And one of the reasons is so that there won't be an argument against the fact that you go to hell or to paradise. But this is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Al-Zumar, He makes it very clear that when the people enter into hellfire, and they will be asked, weren't there any messengers that came to you to warn you? They said, certainly, definitely, but حَقَّتْ كَلِمَةُ الْعَذَابِ عَلَى الْكَافِرِينَ. Yani they enter into hellfire while they are sure that hellfire is the only correct place for them. So meaning that even that they don't want to enter into hellfire, there is nobody entering into hellfire doubting whether this is correct and just. And that's actually one of the biggest, the most painful things is when they enter hellfire, they don't have a counter argument. You see? So they enter into hellfire and they can't even say, no, Ya Rabbi. They can't say, wait, Ya Rabbi, because they know after Yawm al-Qiyamah there is no excuse whatsoever for them to be able to use. And this is why they enter into hellfire knowing that that they, subhanAllah, that they deserve it. Now the last question about the divine justice is, people say, but how just is an eternal fire? How just is an eternal fire? I mean, if Allah or God is the most merciful, then, I mean, it's for eternity. And then the example they give is like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, that the people, Allah says in the Quran, we will only increase you in pain. The only thing we do is increase you in pain, in suffering. So as it is an ongoing, eternal increase of pain and suffering and torment and so much more, how can we now say that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is just? Right? So the example we give is if a judge were to say that you need to imprison for 50 years and that you need to be in isolation for 50 years and that you have no right whatsoever on anything to eat apart from bread and water, that for 50 years nobody can visit you, that you are not entitled to a window through which you can look to the outside world. So that is your what? Your
sentence.
Your sentence. Now the moment you enter into that prison, you have a basketball court for your own. You have a 5-star meal, 5 times a day, 20 people can visit you every 3 hours, you have a telephone, you have everything. So now even though you're imprisoned, but you didn't reach your sentence, and every year during these 50 years, you're getting a bit less. Now instead of 3 hours of visit, you get 2 hours and a half. And it actually increases. But in reality, you are still in the grace of the judge because you're being treated better than you were actually sentenced. Do you understand what I mean? So now when people enter into hellfire, they have a certain punishment that they should receive, but they will never reach it. Now they keep on going, but when their punishment is there, now what they deserve, their adhab, their punishment keeps on being increased, but it will not attain a level which is not in harmony with what they are supposed to be given as a punishment. And that's why they are always, even though that they are in hellfire, they are always under the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His mercy. Do you understand? So that's very important to know. And ذُقْ إِنَّكَ أَنْتَ الْعَزِيزُ al-Karim. Now, Surah Jathiyah, look up. Look up. Al-Hakim. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says ذُقْ, He says taste. Now, and taste in the Arabic language, when you say ذُقْ, right? When you say ذُقْ, it means taste. Excuse me? Karim, yes, I know. So, ذُقْ إِنَّكَ أَنْتَ الْعَزِيزُ الْكَرِيمُ. Now, so it says Aziz, He's the Almighty, He's the Powerful, subhanahu wa ta'ala, but He's Karim. Why is it about Karim? It's about hellfire. Why do we speak about Karim? Because they are still in His generosity. If they're being given a liter of boiling water, well, they should have been given 2 liters. You see? If they eat 1 darir, 1 fruit of hellfire which looks like the head of a shaitan, then what? Then they are now given maybe half. Allah is always generous for them. So they can't even say, Ya Rabbi, this is too much, because they know they deserve more. You see this? So this is how we look at the divine justice. And this is why we say, even if it's an eternity, because it being an eternity, they will never get the punishment they deserve. Meaning, never get, the punishment that they should have been given. But we can't say it like this because Allah gives it, so it's the way that it should be given, if you understand what I mean. So that's the divine mercy. But in Jannah, all the other way around. Every moment is better than the previous one. Every moment is better than the previous one. So they say every microsecond, you're always in a climax of euphoria, we say it like that. No? And if you were not to have been given an ever-living body, you would have died out of happiness. No? Because the human being can't do this. They even say when someone's in love and it would take more, he would be in that same butterfly, lovey-dovey state for more than 1.5 years, he would die. Because you eat less, you concentrate less on things, you sleep less, you're in another state. And this is why between 6 months and 1.5 years, that's how long it takes. And then these hormones, they disappear. That's when being in love turns into loving. And that's a stage where a lot of people think, I don't love that person anymore, because they don't have the same feeling. But that feeling now is replaced by a mature kind of loving someone, where the stage where someone needs to get connected and other hormones are released is now over. You see? So why am I saying all this? Subhanallah, yes, paradise. So in paradise, we are in that state which could actually kill us. That's how happy we are. I mean, we can't take this. Imagine yourself going off that roller coaster. You say roller coaster in the UK? Yeah, like when you go down. Imagine going down all the time. It's nice when it goes up. Oh, we say, oh, Allahu Akbar. But imagine like 5 years in a row. Like, at a certain moment it won't be fun anymore, right? So, but no, in Jannah, no. You're yes, all the time. And the most beautiful thing is in Jannah there are no wants and no needs. What does that mean? Because wants and needs and yearnings are a weakness. So in Jannah you are given something before wanting it. So you never want something. But the moment it comes, you say, that's what I wanted. And then you get something else, oh, that's what I want, no, that's what I want. And like this, you're all the time. I mean, how good and beautiful can it be? The Prophet ﷺ said when the angels come with all these different kind of drinks of different kind of colors, every time they give it to you, it tastes different. But now you can say, but that was my favorite drink. No, the moment you drink something else, that's your favorite. No, now that's my favorite. No, this is my favorite. That's my favorite. No, imagine you going all the time. I mean, it's I want to be there. But the most beautiful thing is all of this is nothing. When you compare it to looking at Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, لِلَّذِينَ أَحْسَنُوا الْحُسْنَ وَزِيَادَةً. Those who do good, for them there is husna, paradise, and more. If you have to choose between good and more, for what do you go?
More.
Go for more. If you give me, you can if you want, halal, no problem, I'm not begging. If you give me 50,000 pounds, I'll give you imagine. So if you give me 50,000 pounds, and then somebody else gives me 50 million pounds, or 500 million pounds, all of a sudden, these 50,000, they turn into pocket money. It's just like nothing anymore. Do you say pocket money? Change, it's like change, 50,000. What's 50,000? I've got 500 million. So all of a sudden, that which I thought to be a lot, all of a sudden it's like, what do I need? 500 million. So here, oh, nice drink, nice it. It's time to look at Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why do I need this for? And then you go there. And eventually, the stronger you long to be with Allah in this life, and the more you try to do your best to come close to Him in this life, the more you will be allowed to look at Him there. You see? So this is why the people of Ihsan struggle to reach the level of Ihsan. As I said last time, Islam will die. Meaning, there will be no fiqh, no salah, no zakah, no siyam, nothing. Iman, aqidah, no longer needed. Ihsan, that you worship Allah as if you see Him, that's the only knowledge which will continue. It's an eternal knowledge. And the way we live that knowledge here will increase our state there. And this is why the people who really want to look at Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala a lot, let them be alone with Allah during the night. Make your night into the most special time in your life. That's where you are alone with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that you worship Him as if you were to see Him. And this is the prayer of the awliya. One of my mashaykh said, if you don't have a night prayer, then you have no connection with Allah whatsoever. If you have no night prayer, you have no connection with Allah whatsoever. Because do you know someone who says that he loves someone and doesn't want to be alone with him? It doesn't exist. Loving someone is wanting to be alone with that someone, to have his time for you alone. The example I always give is people pay to be alone with Ronaldo. We don't have to pay to be alone with Allah. But yet, people seem to be spending more money and energy and time to be close to their stars than we being to the Lord of all stars. So this is why we don't need to fool ourselves. If you want to know, if I want to know how close we are and how strongly we long for Him, look at your night prayer. And if you want to know whether you will see Him a lot in the hereafter, look at your night prayer. And this is why Al-Hasan al-Basri, and I said this before, when he was asked why are the people who pray at night, why do they have the most beautiful faces? He said, لِأَنَّهُمْ خَلَوْا بِالرَّحْمَنِ فَأَلْبَسَهُمْ مِنْ نُورِ. Because they were alone with the Rahman, so He beautified them with His light. They were alone with Him. So barakallahu fikum, to come back, I will come back to you. Divine justice, barakallahu fikum, there is always divine justice. Even the people in Hellfire, they what? They are under the protection of Allah, of not being punished more than they deserve to be punished. You see? And this is why Imam Rumi, and that's very special, I didn't hear anybody else apart from him saying this, Jalaluddin Rumi, he said, hell is better for the non-believers than dunya. He said, Because in dunya, they didn't believe in Allah. In akhirah they do. And he said, in akhirah their punishment will be physical, but at least they will know that their Lord exists. And in the dunya, their punishment was spiritual and not physical. And they didn't know that Allah exists. And tell me, are those who know that Allah exists and those who don't, are they the same? He's the only one who said this, but I find it very confronting and challenging. So, subhanAllah. وصلى الله وسلم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه. You can go ahead. Yes.
So is it correct what you just taught us to understand that, like you said, the reminder? So to be opposite of the kuffar, should we be reminding ourselves often?
Yes.
Yeah.
And we do this by the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
And then here, when it says about this, the seal, so about the hearts, the hearing and the sight, should we be thinking carefully about how we are using those things and seeing if they are attached to Allah or to other things, yes, to see if we are going towards the right direction? So is that another way to understand
yes,
this?
Definitely. Yes.
You mentioned kuffar, as they're the people that turn Allah's signs and turn them upside down.
Yes.
So if people claim to believe Allah, and believe in Allah, they believe in Allah, are they also kuffar if they don't follow, for example, the actual full signs because their hearts?
Can you ask the question again?
So for example, Ahlul Kitab, Christians and Jews, they believe in Allah according to their understanding of it.
There are الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا مِنْ أَهْلِ الْكِتَابِ. The moment that someone doesn't recognize, unless the message didn't come to him, the moment that someone doesn't recognize Muhammad ﷺ as being the prophet sent by Allah, then they are kuffar.
Okay.
So the thing is that, as I said, unless the message, which might be very strange, but didn't come to them, then that's a different thing.
Okay.
So because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَا كُنَّا مُعَذِّبِينَ حَتَّى نَبْعَثَ رَسُولًا, we do not punish until we send a messenger. That's in Surah al-Isra. So our scholar said that these are the people of the people of the yes, the people of Fatra, and these are the people of the Fatra, and they will be tested on the Day of Judgment.
So it's not enough just to believe in God?
No, it's not enough. No, because the kufr is آمن الرسول بما أنزل إليه من ربه والمؤمنون كل آمن بالله وملائكته وكتبه ورسله. And then he made it clear, لا نفرق بين أحد من رسله. So this is important. And also in their books, they were supposed to believe before these books were altered. And Muhammad was mentioned, and in the Torah and in the Injil. So anyway, those who died of Ahlul Kitab before hearing about Muhammad and held on to their books, they died as believers. So they were believers. And those who didn't receive the message, like for example some Christian tribes, for example in Ethiopia, for example, who are very strong believers and still have Tawheed until today. Like there was a documentary about them. They might be believers until the message comes to them, because they don't do shirk. They don't say that Jesus, that Isa is the Son of God, know that he should be worshipped, and so much more. But the moment the message comes and they refute it, then they are not believers. But what is the message? That's another question. Like, when do we say that the message has reached the people? Some say it's sufficient to hear about Islam. Some say no. The dawah should be done by ulama, because the Prophet ﷺ only sent ulama to do dawah. He never sent just like the main people. They were people with knowledge appointed by him ﷺ. So is it sufficient for a non-Muslim to look at the news and hear, yes, and today Muslims killed 500 people. Oh yes, I'm going to become a Muslim now. I mean, is that sufficient? So this is where the debate is today. Like, how should this message come to them? Or is it sufficient for them to have the possibility or access to books, for example? So I think it's a very important debate today, because the message of Islam has been altered by Muslims behavior, and by the non-Muslims alike. So what Islam truly is not even clear for Muslims. The only thing that they agree upon is Allah is the Lord and Muhammad is the Prophet ﷺ, and that's it. But for the rest, they don't even agree. They disagree amongst themselves. They might not greet one another just because I have a green turban and you don't. No, I mean, because I'm a Deobandi and I'm a Salafi and I'm a Diti, I'm a Dati, and then at the end, you know, the one who just says I'm Muslim and I don't attribute myself to anything might be the most weird of all. No, it's true. Like that's what I do. I'm a nothingy, and I'm not. I'm from Ahl Sunnah, of course. Yeah, so I'm from Ahl Sunnah. I'm not a Shia, but I'm not from ISIS either. But but you know what I mean. I don't, and people don't like it when I say this, but I am not from India. I'm from Ahl Sunnah, and that's where I stop. And yes, I believe in the Aqidah of the Shia. I believe that I have to follow madhab, but for me that doesn't take me out of what?
It doesn't define you.
It doesn't define me. No, it doesn't define me because it's not a group thing. Yes.
See, wouldn't the same apply to us if we said we didn't believe in Musa alayhi salam, Isa alayhi salam?
Yes, then you're a kafir.
So it could go the other way.
Yes. If somebody now says, I don't believe in Musa, kafir. If somebody says, like, I don't believe in a prophet, and he was, for example, not mentioned in an authentic sunnah, nor in the Qur'an, then we wouldn't say this. It's only when it has been established through the authentic sunnah or the Qur'an. And because we find some names of prophets, like, so if you were not to believe that Luqman is a prophet, are you a kafir? No. No? Why? Because some say, no, he wasn't. Yes, he was. Same with al-Khadir. And it's not Khidr. In Arabic we say Khadir, and everybody says Khidr, I don't know why. So, when you don't believe he's a prophet, then you're not kafir. Why? Because it's not agreed upon. Even though that Al-Hafid ibn Hajar rahimahullah said that we should believe that in the fact that he was a prophet, but whatever. So, it all depends. No. Somebody else? Okay, khalas, that's it for today. I'm sorry the last part was really off topic, but it was still about kafaru. Inshallah, tomorrow we have the explanation of al-Hikam al-Ata'iyya. I really advise you to be there. For me, these hikam were life-changing. They were really life-changing. And I have based my explanation on more than 12 different commentaries. I made PowerPoint presentations for them. So inshallah, I would really like you to be there, inshallah. Inshallah.